Why can't the U.S. military fully defeat Iran's naval forces, even after months of intensive airstrikes and full-scale maritime blockades? How did a mid-tier regional power lock down the world's most critical energy strait for 2 decades, countering America's superpower military advantage with a low-cost, game-changing underground defense system? The answer lies in Iran's little-known mountain underground tunnel arsenal, an asymmetric warfare fortress that has completely rewritten the rules of modern naval combat in the Persian Gulf. In an era where global naval power is defined by nuclear aircraft carriers, destroyers, and large-scale surface fleets, Iran has abandoned traditional naval arms races and spent nearly 20 years building a hidden coastal mountain cave-based system as its core asymmetric maritime combat force. Unlike Iran's conventional navy, this entire combat system is independently commanded and operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, forming a completely separate command and combat system with no overlapping authority. After 2 decades of continuous excavation, reinforcement, and intelligent upgrading, Iran has built at least 10 hardened tunnel military bases along the Persian Gulf coast and key Hormuz Strait islands, forming a hidden combat layout that locks the entire energy lifeline of the Middle East. As the core hub of Iran's offshore special operations, Furur Island replicates the full training and equipment standards of U.S. Special Forces, serving as the core pivot of the entire underground combat system. All cave bases are carved directly into high-density natural granite cliffs, with dedicated hidden docks inside, allowing hundreds of high-speed small boats to stay concealed for a long time and rush into the strait's waterway within minutes after receiving combat orders. Dubbed the Mosquito fleet by Western military circles, these small boat clusters adopt a swarm saturation attack tactic, targeting large warships and superoil tankers to launch precise surprise strikes. Relying on the natural shielding effect of hundreds of meters of granite rock layers, the underground tunnel system perfectly evades satellite, aerial, and radar reconnaissance, solving the fatal flaw of conventional naval bases being easily locked and destroyed. According to the latest satellite monitoring data in July 2026, Iran is still continuously reinforcing tunnel entrances, expanding internal waterways and adding hidden spare exits in Keshem Island and Sirik coastal areas, continuously optimizing its hidden delivery system. With this low-cost and high survivability underground fortification system, Iran effectively offsets the absolute equipment advantages of the U.S. military in large surface warships and aerial reconnaissance, and firmly holds the strategic deterrence of the Hormuz Strait in its own hands. After 2 decades of continuous excavation, reinforcement, expansion, and intelligent upgrading, Iran has now completed the construction of at least 10 standardized hardened underground tunnel bases along the entire southern Persian Gulf coastline and key waterway nodes of the Hormuz Strait. These military bases are precisely positioned at the throat of the strait, forming a multi-point linked and fully covered concealed combat layout. According to long-term tracking and research by global military intelligence agencies and satellite monitoring think tanks, Furur Island has always been recognized as the core operational hub of the IRGC Navy's Maritime Special Forces and the benchmark pivot of the entire mountain cave-based system, boasting a far higher strategic status than conventional coastal bases on Keshem Island and Sirik. Different from the simplistic military outposts perceived by the outside world, the construction standards of the Furur Island base fully match the world's top special operations systems. The Iranian military has thoroughly referenced and replicated the training syllabus, equipment configuration, tactical methods, and logistics support standards of the U.S. Navy SEALs and Delta Force, building a professional and modern offshore special assault force that serves as the core incubation base for Iran's maritime raids, waterway interception, and special deterrence operations. In terms of engineering construction, all of Iran's speedboat underground cave bases abandon the conventional construction mode of artificial building materials and are directly excavated inside high-density natural granite cliff walls. The core protective layer is formed by natural rock masses formed by hundreds of millions of years of geological movement, possessing innate defensive advantages far exceeding ordinary reinforced concrete military fortifications. Each underground cave base is equipped with standardized dedicated hidden docks, whose water depth and channel width fully meet the docking, maintenance, resupply, and rapid dispatch needs of small, high-speed combat speedboats. Thousands of small, high-speed boats can stay concealed and anchored for a long time without frequently exiting the cave to expose their positions. In terms of operational response efficiency, this underground system demonstrates outstanding practical combat superiority. Combat vessels can complete the entire process of startup, departure, and entry into the main strait waterway within minutes after receiving combat orders, quickly forming operational deterrence. The cluster of small, high-speed speedboats deployed in mountain cave bases is uniformly named the Mosquito fleet by Western military circles. The core reason for this title lies in its unique tactical logic. Abandoning head-on fleet confrontations, it relies on the advantages of small tonnage, high speed, large quantity, and strong concealment to carry out multi-directional simultaneous assault and all-round encirclement swarm saturation attacks, specifically launching precise surprise strikes on high-value targets such as enemy large surface warships and ocean-going super merchant ships, leveraging minimal combat costs to generate huge strategic deterrence effects. In the modern combat environment dominated by full domain monitoring via satellite and high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, the concealment of military targets has become the core prerequisite for battlefield survival. The greatest strategic advantage of Iran's mountain cave-based system is that it perfectly makes up for the fatal weakness of traditional maritime military facilities being easily reconnoitered and destroyed. Conventional naval ports, open-air docks, and shore-based ship parking areas are completely exposed, enabling optical satellites, synthetic aperture radar satellites, and high-altitude UAVs to easily lock precise coordinates. Once a conflict breaks out, precise destruction can be achieved in the first round of strikes, leaving naval equipment with almost no chance of survival. In contrast, Iran's mountain underground cave bases form a natural barrier, relying on hundreds of meters of thick natural granite rock layers, which can effectively shield various mainstream reconnaissance methods, including radar detection, optical reconnaissance, and infrared monitoring. It is almost impossible to identify the specific locations of tunnel entrances or accurately locate internal ship parking areas and military facility layouts from high altitude or space perspectives. Even the most advanced modern reconnaissance systems cannot penetrate thick natural rock masses to obtain core intelligence of underground fortifications, endowing this system with extremely strong wartime survivability based on the latest commercial satellite imagery US. Military theater satellite monitoring data and continuous tracking reports from Middle Eastern military think tanks in July 2026. It is clear that Iran has not stopped upgrading its existing cave-based system and continues to iterate and optimize its core military installations. The current key renovation areas are concentrated on the coasts of Keshem Island and Sirik, two strategically vital locations. Military engineering troops continuously thicken and reinforce tunnel entrances, widen internal navigation channels and ship scheduling passages, and add dozens of hidden spare exits and emergency evacuation channels, further improving the whole process system of concealed ship deployment, rapid maneuvering, and wartime risk avoidance. From the perspective of strategic game theory, the core purpose of Iran's continuous upgrading of underground cave bases is to offset the absolute equipment generation gap advantages of the U.S. military and large surface warships, aerial reconnaissance and long-range precision strikes through low-cost and high-resilience underground concealed fortifications. The U.S. military has long controlled the Persian Gulf Sea, relying on nuclear-powered aircraft carrier formations, 10,000-ton Aegis destroyers, and global satellite reconnaissance systems, leaving Iran's conventional navy with no chance of winning head-on confrontations. However, relying on this asymmetric underground combat system, Iran has successfully reversed its battlefield disadvantage, firmly secured the strategic dominance of the Hormuz Strait, and served as the core strategic carrier for its decades-long deterrence against global energy shipping. The intense U.S.-Iran conflict that broke out on February 28, 2026, has become the best real-world test of the practical combat value of Iran's underground cave-based system, and has prompted the global military community to re-recognize the core logic of asymmetric offshore warfare. In the early stage of the conflict, the United States and Israel launched a high-intensity joint airstrike operation, targeting the core main force of Iran's conventional navy in the first round, focusing fire on destroying Iran's open-air ports, shore-based facilities, and large surface warships. The strategic intention was to paralyze Iran's maritime combat capability through lightning strikes and completely eliminate the threat of Hormuz Strait waterway blockade. The first round of airstrikes covered Iran's southern core military belt, including two large military civilian ports of Chabahar and Bushehr, the key shore-based missile position of Jask, and the conventional naval base of Sirik, achieving full coverage strikes on the main facilities of Iran's conventional navy. Under the fierce airstrikes, 70% of various small speedboat equipment parked in the open air along the Caspian Sea coast of Iran was destroyed, and the openly deployed maritime combat forces suffered heavy losses. According to official statistical data released by the U.S. Pentagon in early April, after the first round of airstrikes in the conflict, more than 155 pieces of Iran's maritime combat equipment were completely destroyed or severely damaged. The damaged equipment was mainly large and medium-sized visible surface warships, including frigates, light frigates and old minesweepers, the core main force equipment of Iran's conventional navy. The specific combat loss data is highly representative. 6 out of Iran's 7 frontline frigates in service before the war were sunk or severely damaged and lost combat capability, and all 2 modern light frigates sank. This means that Iran's decades-old conventional ocean-going maritime combat system was basically destroyed, and its traditional capability of head-on maritime confrontation was completely lost. According to traditional naval warfare thinking, the total annihilation of a country's main surface warships is equivalent to the complete loss of sea control and waterway blockade capability. However, the actual combat trend of this US-Iran conflict has completely broken this inherent cognition, presenting an extremely differentiated battlefield situation where large surface warships were almost completely destroyed, while small assault boats maintained an ultra-high survival rate. The Field Intelligence Evaluation Team of the Wall Street Journal stationed in the Middle East theater revealed the core truth behind the battlefield situation through multiple methods including ground investigation, intelligence tracing, and on-site verification. As of early April 2026, the overall intact rate of high-speed assault boats deployed by the IRGC in mountain tunnel cave bases exceeded 60%, and the core assault force suffered no substantial damage. Many frontline U.S. military generals had to admit in subsequent media interviews that by mid-April, multiple rounds of precise U.S. airstrikes only succeeded in sinking half of Iran's open and semi-concealed speedboats. The remaining combat boats hidden in deep mountain cave bases could not be effectively attacked at all. The core crux is that these speedboats are hidden in 100-meter level granite rock cave bases for a long time, making precise positioning impossible for satellite reconnaissance equipment. Without accurate coordinates, targeted elimination strikes cannot be implemented, rendering U.S. precision-guided weapons completely ineffective. Subsequent review reports released by many top international military think tanks have pointed out a key core point in the special offshore battlefield environment of the Hormuz Strait, which is narrow, shallow, reef-intensive, and highly sheltered. Conventional large warships with huge tonnage, conspicuous targets, and limited maneuverability have extremely low practical combat value and can hardly play an effective role. On the contrary, they are easily fixed targets for enemy missiles, speedboats, and mines. Even if all of Iran's conventional large surface warships are sunk by the U.S. military, Iran still retains the core capability to continuously harass strait waterways, intercept passing merchant ships, and deter foreign warships as long as the cluster of small high-speed speedboats preserved in mountain underground cave bases remains combat effective. Multiple actual combat cases in July 2026 directly confirm this conclusion. Even after months of continuous airstrikes, Iranian speedboats still took the initiative to launch operations many times, intercepting foreign oil tankers and merchant ships in the central and southern waterways of the Hormuz Strait, and conducting normalized waterway control operations. This fully proves that the comprehensive losses of the conventional navy have not weakened Iran's core strategic deterrence capability to block the Hormuz Strait, and the practical combat resilience of the entire underground concealed combat system far exceeds external expectations. In July 2026, in order to completely suppress Iran's maritime assault forces and dismantle its asymmetric combat system, the U.S. military launched multiple rounds of sustained high-intensity airstrikes, focusing on core southern Iranian coastal military areas including Keshem Island, Bandar Abbas, Sirak, and Haji Abdullah, targeting various coastal military supporting facilities and auxiliary combat systems. After the launch of this round of airstrikes, a large number of self-media rumors, such as the U.S. military has completely destroyed Iran's underground speedboat tunnel network, and Iran's Mosquito fleet is completely annihilated, quickly spread online, triggering heated global public opinion discussions. However, cross-verification with authoritative sources clearly shows that these exaggerated combat result descriptions are groundless subjective speculations by self-media, which deviate greatly from the actual battlefield situation, with clear and definite factual boundaries. Up to now, first-tier global authoritative battlefield news sources, including U.S. Central Command, Israel's authoritative media, the Jerusalem Post, and CNN, have not released any official announcements confirming that U.S. airstrikes have penetrated Iran's deep mountain tunnels, caused cave-based main body collapses, or destroyed core concealed speedboat bases. The single special operation airstrike duration reached 90 minutes, belonging to targeted high-intensity fixed-point strikes. The officially released strike list is clear and definite, mainly covering surface shallow military facilities such as coastal defense systems, cruise missile warehouses, shore-based radar monitoring stations, ground military barracks, and ammunition transit supply points, excluding deep mountain tunnel main bodies from valid strike results. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency simultaneously confirmed that 10 independent explosion points appeared in the Sirak area after the airstrikes, and many ground military facilities in core areas such as Keshem Island and Bandar Abbas were severely damaged. Peripheral supporting facilities such as ground cave entrances, external supply roads, and vehicle parking areas were accurately bombed and damaged. By sorting out all official U.S. military battle reports, on-site verification reports from global independent battlefield media, and theater civilian image data, an accurate conclusion can be drawn. All current U.S. airstrikes have only caused substantial damage to peripheral auxiliary facilities of Iran's cave bases. There are no valid records of bombing, blocking, or damage to the core cave bases, internal main structures of deep tunnels, or key ship docking and storage areas. Professional military analysts have given a popular and accurate interpretation. The core standard to distinguish the strike effect of modern underground fortifications is to identify whether the target is peripheral supporting facilities or core underground fortifications. Bombing external cave entrance roads, surface radar stations, and shallow supply positions can only restrict the sortie efficiency of speedboats in the short term and create temporary operational obstruction, and cannot damage the internal ship docking space, ammunition storage area, and combat scheduling system of the tunnels. Iranian military engineering troops have mature rapid repair capabilities, which can complete entrance cleaning, road restoration, and equipment reset in a short time, quickly restoring the normal operation of the entire speedboat combat system. Strategically, multiple rounds of U.S. airstrikes in July 2026 have only slightly weakened the logistics supporting capability of Iran's cave-based system, failing to fundamentally dismantle its concealed combat and rapid assault capabilities. The widely spread claim of complete tunnel destruction has no support from first-hand authoritative intelligence and is a typical exaggerated public opinion interpretation with extremely low credibility. From the professional perspective of engineering, defense, and weapon confrontation, Iran's underground military fortifications built on hundreds of meters of natural granite mountains are one of the most difficult target types for modern precision airstrike systems to conquer and have long been an unsolvable defense problem for the U.S. military. Different from artificially reinforced concrete fortifications, natural granite rock masses have far higher compactness, pressure resistance, and explosion resistance than ordinary building materials. Coupled with multiple layers of artificial reinforcement, explosion-proof, shock-proof, and impact-resistant structures added later by the Iranian military, they can maximize the damage reduction effect against U.S. bunker busters and guided bombs. A single conventional bombing round cannot achieve complete destruction. Multiple harsh conditions and repeated overlapping strikes are required to cause substantial paralysis of deep core combat effectiveness. Iran demonstrates outstanding strategic wisdom in the site selection of underground fortifications. All speedboat cave bases and inland underground missile cities are built in high-density, high-strength natural granite mountain areas whose physical pressure resistance, impact resistance, and penetration resistance are far superior to conventional military reinforced concrete fortifications. The GBU-57 massive bunker buster, currently the most powerful and penetrative weapon in service with the U.S. military, has a theoretical maximum penetration depth of 40 meters of hard rock under ideal laboratory conditions, serving as the U.S. military's core trump card against underground reinforced fortifications. However, this data loses all reference value in actual Iranian battlefield scenarios. The mountain thickness of Iran's core cave bases generally exceeds 100 meters, and the rock thickness of some core hub bases even exceeds 300 meters. Facing natural granite barriers of over 100 meters, the actual effective penetration depth of the GBU-57 drops to less than 30 meters, making it impossible to touch key combat areas such as tunnel core cabins, ship docking zones, and ammunition storage centers with negligible killing efficiency. In addition to the innate defensive advantages of natural rock masses, the internal structural design of Iran's underground fortifications also reflects outstanding tactical wisdom, adopting an advanced network redundant layout and completely abandoning the traditional single-channel and single-entrance fortification design. Dozens of independent tunnels inside the entire tunnel system are interconnected and linked with each other, equipped with dozens of scattered concealed entrances, emergency passages, and spare waterways, forming a multi-node, multi-channel, and fault-tolerant three-dimensional network. The core advantage of this design lies in extreme battlefield survivability. Even if one entrance is bombed and blocked or a certain tunnel section is damaged by U.S. strikes, all other passages and entrances can still operate normally, continuously completing core combat tasks such as speedboat scheduling, ammunition transportation, and combat force deployment without overall system paralysis caused by local damage. At the same time, each underground cave base is equipped with completely independent power supply, ventilation, water supply and drainage, and emergency support systems, which can completely isolate the impact of external airstrikes, explosions, smoke, and shock waves, enabling long-term self-sustaining operation for months or even years, and fully meeting wartime closed combat needs. Through a large number of simulation deductions and actual combat reviews, the military engineering community has summarized 3 harsh conditions that must be met simultaneously to completely destroy a single Iranian mountain underground base, and these 3 conditions can hardly be achieved at the same time in the current battlefield environment. First, it is necessary to accurately obtain top-secret full data, including complete internal tunnel layout drawings, cabin distribution, channel trends, entrance coordinates, and core facility locations. Such underground fortification data belongs to Iran's highest military secrets and can hardly be fully obtained by external forces. Second, multiple heavy bunker busters need to be precisely launched for relay layered penetration strikes, breaking through rock masses and artificial reinforcement structures layer by layer to reach the core cabins. Third, continuous full coverage airstrikes must be carried out to completely block all entrances and destroy all internal combat cabins and supporting facilities. Conventional bombing strikes only on surface entrances will only cause slight surface rock damage, with internal ships, ammunition, equipment, and personnel fully preserved. Even if some shallow cabins are damaged under extreme conditions, Iran's professional engineering repair troops can quickly divide damaged areas, isolate explosion shock waves and smoke spread relying on the 3-dimensional tunnel network, retain most combat functions to the greatest extent, and ensure the overall stability of system combat effectiveness. It is worth mentioning that this mature underground defense logic has been fully applied to Iran's national underground missile city system. Some core missile facilities are buried 500 meters under granite mountains. The entire 3-dimensional reinforced fortification system has greatly increased the operational cost and ammunition consumption cost of U.S. airstrikes, significantly prolonged the conflict consumption cycle, and become the core engineering advantage and strategic confidence of Iran's asymmetric national defense system. There is a cognitive misunderstanding in external public opinion that simply regards Iran's mountain speedboat cave bases as a single maritime combat outpost. In fact, speedboat cave bases are only a core link rather than the whole of Iran's 4-tier linked asymmetric 3-dimensional maritime defense system. After decades of iterative improvement, Iran has built a 4-dimensional defense network of speedboat assault plus long-range missile strike plus submarine, underwater lurking plus intelligent mine full domain blockade. The 4 major combat sectors are linked and mutually complementary, forming full coverage strategic deterrence on water, underwater, and long-range dimensions, continuously restricting global shipping safety in the Hormuz Strait. The entire system has no single core shortcoming, with extremely strong anti-destruction, anti-strike, and anti-paralysis capabilities. The first layer of core combat power is the Mosquito fleet speedboat cluster deployed in coastal mountain cave bases. Thousands of various high-speed assault boats, special operations speedboats, and mine-laying speedboats are concealed and stationed in coastal tunnel bases. Relying on swarm saturation attack tactics, they carry out close-range rapid assaults, specifically intercepting, harassing, and assaulting foreign warships and ocean-going merchant ships entering the strait, and seizing the initiative of close-range offshore operations. The second layer of deterrence is the nationwide underground missile city system spread across Iran's mountainous areas. Relying on the tens of kilometers-long natural mountain tunnel network of the Zagros Mountains, it stores thousands of various ballistic missiles and anti-ship cruise missiles, with some missile ranges covering the entire Persian Gulf and northern Arabian Sea. These underground missile cities are equipped with automatic rail transit systems, which can quickly complete the whole process of ammunition assembly, transportation, erection, and launch. Unlike traditional shore-based missile positions that need to be transferred after each launch, they can achieve uninterrupted continuous fire output and undertake the strategic task of long-range precise strikes on open sea targets. The third layer of concealed combat power is underwater lurking combat forces, which is also the most easily ignored key deterrent. The Iranian Navy and IRGC Navy are equipped with more than 20 Ghadir-class miniature submarines and multiple 600-ton Fateh-class medium submarines. These submarines are small in size, extremely low in noise, and highly concealed, perfectly adapting to the shallow water, reef-intensive and hydrologically complex combat environment of the Persian Gulf. During wartime, they can silently lurk at key waterway nodes on the Strait seabed, avoid enemy detection relying on advanced sonar systems, and launch torpedoes and intelligent mines at any time to assault passing warships and merchant ships, building an underwater blockade barrier. The fourth layer of guaranteed combat power is the full-domain intelligent mine-laying system. In the early stage of the conflict, 80% of Iran's mine-laying equipment successfully avoided the first round of U.S. airstrikes, completely retaining its underwater blockade capability. Iran's self-developed bottom-sitting intelligent mines have an underwater dormancy function, which can silently lurk on the seabed for months and actively attack by accurately identifying ship signals. Moreover, mine clearance operations face extremely high risks, and mine clearance troops are easily ambushed by Iranian speedboats during operations, resulting in greatly reduced mine clearance efficiency. The collaborative combat logic of the entire four-tier defense system is clear, with distinct division of labor and progressive layers. Speedboats are responsible for close-range rapid harassment, boarding interception, and tactical assault. Submarines undertake underwater concealed lurking, waterway blockade, and underwater ambush tasks. Underground missile cities deliver long-range fire strikes against open-sea aircraft carrier formations and military bases. Intelligent mines realize long-term waterway blockade, navigations restriction, and sustained shipping risks. Most importantly, this system adopts a decentralized combat layout, with no single core equipment or core position. Even if a certain type of combat force is severely damaged or a certain base is destroyed, the remaining combat systems can still operate independently and perform blockade and deterrence tasks autonomously, without overall combat effectiveness collapse. Even if the U.S.-Iran conflict achieves a ceasefire in the future, a large number of intelligent mines laid on the seabed and long-term lurking underwater submarines will leave long-term security risks in strait waterways. Full domain clearance will require months of high-risk mine clearance operations, greatly increasing the time cost of post-war shipping recovery and the economic cost of global energy trade, forming a long-term strategic containment effect. Faced with Iran's increasingly mature asymmetric three-dimensional defense system, the United States has formulated a dual-line pressure strategy of sustained aerial airstrikes plus full-scale maritime blockade. Attempting to consume Iran's combat hardware through military strikes and deplete its war potential through economic blockade, forcing Iran to make concessions in strategic games through dual-line simultaneous pressure. On April 13, 2026, the U.S. military officially launched a full-domain maritime blockade of the Persian Gulf, comprehensively restricting Iran's crude oil exports and maritime trade circulation, causing huge fiscal losses to Iran in just 1 month. According to a special assessment report released by the U.S. Pentagon in early May, less than 30 days after the implementation of the blockade, Iran's direct crude oil export losses reached $4.8 billion US dollars, with a subsequent average daily economic loss of about $500 million US dollars, demonstrating remarkable sanctions effects. Before the blockade, Iran's daily crude oil exports were nearly 2 million barrels, serving as the core pillar of national fiscal revenue and the key economic source for maintaining national defense construction, social operation, and people's livelihood security. After the full implementation of the blockade, Iran's daily crude oil exports plummeted to less than 300,000 barrels. Karg Island, the main crude oil export terminal, has been idle for a long time. Oil trade has almost been completely cut off, and the country's economic hematopoietic capacity has suffered a fatal blow. To ensure blockade effectiveness, the U.S. military has invested massive military resources. According to U.S. Central Command data, by mid-July 2026, the U.S. military had deployed 3 nuclear-powered aircraft carrier formations and dozens of various early warning and maritime patrol aircraft to achieve 24-hour all-weather patrol and monitoring of the Hormuz Strait. A total of 85 merchant ships attempting to enter and exit Iranian ports were intercepted, and 3 illegal oil tankers were forcibly detained, aiming to completely cut off Iran's maritime trade channels. However, real-time tracking data from Lloyd's List, the world's authoritative shipping institution, exposed huge loopholes in the U.S. blockade strategy. The seemingly tight full-domain U.S. blockade system actually has a large number of management blind spots. During the conflict, at least 26 ghost oil tankers with automatic ship positioning signals turned off successfully bypassed U.S. surveillance and blockade lines using complex offshore hydrology, reef shelters, and night-concealed routes, completing crude oil export trade through ship-to-ship crude oil transshipment and offshore transit, greatly undermining U.S. blockade effectiveness. The strategic goals of the U.S. dual-line pressure strategy are highly unified. Aerial airstrikes aim to accurately destroy Iran's maritime combat hardware and consume its military strength, while maritime blockade seeks to cut off Iran's economic lifeline and deplete its war potential. Ultimately, the dual means of military high pressure and economic suffocation are used to force Iran to abandon its straight blockade capability and compromise in diplomatic negotiations. However, this seemingly perfect pressure strategy has inherent unavoidable flaws. Long-term full-domain maritime blockade has triggered a chain reaction in the global energy market. With international crude oil prices continuing to rise and the global energy trade pattern severely impacted, some Middle Eastern allies and European energy importers have suffered huge economic losses due to soaring oil prices and unstable energy supply, leading to serious differences over U.S. blockade policies. The U.S. cannot maintain high-intensity and dead-angle-free full-domain maritime control for a long time due to huge consumption of manpower, material, and financial resources. The actual effect of economic pressure has obvious upper limits and cannot achieve the strategic goal of completely collapsing Iran. It is crucial to note that months of high-intensity U.S. airstrikes and maritime blockades have not only triggered military confrontations and economic games, but also caused severe humanitarian disasters, a core dimension generally ignored by global public opinion. Iran's southern coastal military facilities are not independent and closed pure military zones. For a long time, civilian livelihood facilities, residential villages, and commercial supporting facilities are intertwined and integrated with military targets, with highly overlapping military and civilian land use. This makes it impossible for U.S. precision airstrikes to completely avoid collateral civilian damage, and every military strike is accompanied by innocent civilian casualties and livelihood facility destruction. According to the latest official statistics from Iran's Ministry of Health in July 2026, the new round of intensive airstrikes launched in July alone has killed more than 30 civilians and injured over 260 others, including a large number of irrelevant women, children, and the elderly, with vulnerable groups becoming the biggest victims of the conflict. In core southern theater provinces such as Hormuzgan, many public schools, rural clinics, water and power supply hubs, and livelihood traffic bridges have been destroyed in airstrikes. Under the extreme high-temperature summer weather, large-scale water and power outages have directly triggered local livelihood crises, making it difficult for ordinary people to maintain basic living security. The core special operations hub of Far Island is densely surrounded by indigenous residential villages with seamless integration of military and civilian facilities. A previous precise U.S. airstrike targeting a supporting radar station around the island killed an ordinary telecommunications maintenance worker and seriously injured 2 colleagues. All 3 victims had no military background and were purely innocent civilians caught in the conflict, directly highlighting the extreme humanitarian risks brought by mixed military and civilian facilities. Field research teams from multiple independent international human rights organizations have conducted in-depth investigations in southern Iranian war zones and released detailed reports further confirming the authenticity of the humanitarian crisis. A large number of military barracks, supply roads, and transit facilities along Iran's coast are interspersed in the core areas of residential districts, with dense residential buildings and civilian supporting facilities surrounding various U.S. strike targets. Even though the U.S. military fully uses high-precision guided weapons to accurately lock core military targets, the super shockwaves, high-speed fragments, and high-temperature smoke generated by explosions still widely affect surrounding civilian living areas, causing casualties and property losses. A special report released by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs also warns that continuous airstrikes have destroyed a large number of dual-use military and civilian traffic bridges, power transmission lines and water supply pipelines, blocking material transportation channels in southern Iranian towns, and greatly increasing detour distances for medical emergency vehicles. Critically ill and injured patients cannot receive timely treatment, and long-term livelihood recession has caused local population displacement. Most current media reports focus on military equipment losses and battlefield tactical games, deliberately ignoring the expanding civilian casualties and livelihood disasters. A complete, objective, and comprehensive evaluation of this conflict must include humanitarian losses as a core analysis dimension. Comprehensive analysis of battlefield situation, equipment losses, strategic games, and diplomatic trends shows that the current all-round confrontation between the United States and Iran has completely lost the possibility of a quick, decisive victory, and will most likely fall into a long-term balance pattern of military confrontation, consumption games, and diplomatic wrangling. The core reason is that Iran's decentralized and reinforced underground fortification system has extremely strong repair capability and battlefield survivability. Damage to individual facilities does not affect overall combat effectiveness, with low repair cost, short cycle, and high efficiency. In contrast, considering multiple factors including strategic costs, military casualties, and regional situation, the U.S. military firmly avoids ground assault operations and cannot completely eradicate Iran's asymmetric maritime combat threats, relying solely on aerial airstrikes and maritime blockades. At the same time, Qatar continues to serve as a neutral diplomatic mediator, providing secret communication channels for the United States and Iran, forming a dual-line pattern of continuous military pressure and secret diplomatic negotiations for the entire confrontation, with no possibility of short-term decisive battles or rapid ceasefires. From the perspective of actual battlefield conditions, Iran's entire underground defense network adopts a decentralized, multi-point, and redundant layout with numerous widely distributed and highly concealed entrances. Even if some surface supporting facilities and shallow fortifications are damaged by airstrikes, the main structure of deep tunnels remains basically intact, and military engineering troops can quickly complete cleaning and restoration to restore full combat effectiveness in a short time. All current U.S. Aerial strike methods can only weaken Iran's surface combat effectiveness and restrict its operational actions temporarily, unable to achieve permanent and destructive elimination of combat power. Militarily speaking, the only effective way to completely eliminate Iran's mountain tunnel system and eradicate its asymmetric maritime threats is to deploy large-scale ground troops to carry out close-range assault and mopping up operations in southern Iranian coastal mountainous areas. However, this operational plan has huge drawbacks. Ground assaults will cause massive U.S. military casualties, greatly increase U.S. combat consumption, intensify anti-American sentiment across the Middle East, trigger regional chain turbulence, and seriously damage America's strategic layout and geopolitical interests in the Middle East. Therefore, the White House has repeatedly made it clear that large-scale ground combat operations are completely ruled out, and only intermittent airstrikes and sustained blockades will be maintained for long-term consumption in the future. Reviewing modern local war history, long-term aerial consumption wars against decentralized, concealed, multi-layer reinforced and networked underground defense systems have almost never produced decisive battle results where one side completely defeats the other. The ultimate trend of such asymmetric confrontations is mostly long-term national strength consumption and military tug-of-war between the two sides, with gradual cooling and easing driven by third-party diplomatic mediation, rather than one party completely defeating and eliminating the other's combat effectiveness. Qatar continues to perform neutral mediation duties. In July 2026, the Iranian foreign minister paid a special visit to Doha for official foreign affairs activities. Regional geopolitical analysts generally believe that informal secret contacts between the United States and Iran likely took place during the event. Although there are no substantial negotiation results or ceasefire agreements reached so far, the diplomatic communication channels between the two sides have not been completely closed, retaining possibilities for subsequent situation easing. Based on the current situation, it can be accurately predicted that the U.S.-Iran confrontation pattern will maintain a long-term dynamic balance of intermittent aerial consumption plus full-domain maritime blockade plus occasional diplomatic contact. There are no conditions for rapid ceasefires, comprehensive decisive battles, or complete strategic reversals in the short term. Various online public opinion predictions, such as the U.S. military will completely defeat Iran's maritime forces in the short term, and Iran's blockade system will completely collapse, have excessively simplified the complex battlefield situation, equipment confrontation logic and geopolitical game reality, lacking in-depth understanding of asymmetric warfare, underground defense operations, and Middle East geopolitics, with extremely low reference value. Overall, this escalating U.S. Iran Strait confrontation has gone beyond simple military equipment competition and become a classic case of asymmetric national defense systems confronting traditional modern combat systems. With 2 decades of painstakingly built underground three-dimensional fortifications, Iran has successfully contained all-round suppression from the world's top military power at an extremely low strategic cost, reshaped the geopolitical pattern of the Persian Gulf and Hormuz Strait, and provided a new defense paradigm for regional, medium, and small countries to counter major power military deterrents. The situation will continue to evolve with sustained consumption and games between the two sides. If you want to keep up with the latest developments of the U.S.-Iran conflict, gain in-depth interpretation of Middle Eastern geopolitical games, and unpack the core tactics of modern asymmetric warfare, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notification updates. Also, leave your opinions on this long-term confrontation pattern in the comments section. We will continue to track the situation and bring you more professional and in-depth analysis.